Right. So you've reached this video because you have participated to the forum and contributed to establishing a definition for the word monster. So you've won the right to get the proper definitions. Well done. So monster, monstrous monstrosity, we're actually going to focus more on the notion of monster and try to give it a definition. So the first basic thing you always need to do when asked such a question is open a dictionary, which is just what I did. I opened the Oxford Dictionary and it gave me the following definitions for the word monster. The first one being a large, ugly and frightening imaginary creature. The second, an inhumanly cruel or wicked person. Third, a thing of extraordinary or daunting size. 4. A congenitally malformed or mutant animal or plant. Right. If we turn to the etymology of the word, it gets very interesting. This is something I really advise you to do, by the way. When asked to define words, if you're asked to analyze something through specific notions, always take the time to look up a dictionary and find out the etymology of the word. It can be very helpful. In our case, monster has a double etymology. It comes from the Latin monstrum, which means an aberrant occurrence, usually biological, a sign that something is wrong within the natural order. But it also comes from monere, which means both to warn but also to instruct, and this is where the word demonstrate derived from. So thus the monster is also a sign or an instruction. It's here for a purpose, sometimes to show us something or to teach us something. And the question we're going to ask ourselves is, what does it teach us? What does it show us? A few synonyms now for the word monster. So as I told you, we are going to work a lot on vocabulary. We're going to see a lot of synonyms of all the words we're going to use. And as I said again, the pronunciation might be tricky at some point. So here is a list of synonyms of the word monster, but with various meaning. So the first synonym is the word fiend. Fiend is tricky because it looks like friend, but it's pronounced fiend. Okay? It means demon, actually. Demon. Devil is also a tricky one because it looks like evil, but it's pronounced devil. All right? The word ogre, finally, can be problematic to pronounce, but it's quite transparent. A second range of meaning in the second line, lusus naturae, which is the Latin for freak, basically, something weird, abnormal. Finally, in the last line, colossus, which means giant, which is also a synonym for Goliath, and behemoth. All right. So not all those words are synonym between themselves, but they can be helpful to vary the words you're using. Now let's turn back to our definitions and try and see if we can establish a form of typology of the monsters that we're going to encounter. So in the forum, you've listed quite a number of monsters, and some of them come to everybody's mind. Some of them may be more tricky. So the first definition, if you remember, is a large, ugly, and frightening imaginary creature. Here the words are very, very important. Creature first, okay? Not person, not thing, creature, something living, but not quite human. Imaginary then is very important, something that does not really exist, only in our imagination. Frightening is also essential in the definition of a monster. It has to be scary. Ugly is potential. It doesn't have to be ugly to be a monster, but it can be ugly. And large is another characteristic that is dispensable. Examples? Well, everyone amongst you quoted the same monster, which is Frankenstein's monster. This is the first monster that comes to mind whenever I ask the question. But you could also think of, for example, Satan, the Lord of Hell, which is a demon. Dracula, vampires, come also in the first position. Werewolves can also be considered as frightening imaginary creatures. You can also think of mythological creatures like Hydra or Medusa, and amongst the mythological creatures, you have a very, very important choice. The second definition, an inhumanly cruel or wicked person. So here again, it's very interesting because we're moving to the human side of monsters, okay? A person, a human being, but with a wicked and cruel mind, inhumanly cruel or wicked. So a person that is not human anymore, in a way. So here, of course, we have the traditional serial killers like Hannibal Lecter here. We can think of psychopaths like Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but also mass murderers or dictators like Hitler. All right. Third definition, a thing of extraordinary or daunting size. So here, size matters. No pun intended, of course. But just by the size of it, by its giantness, if I can say so, the thing is considered as a monster. Okay, so this would be, for example, Colossus in the mythology, which is basically a big man, or a big lizard like Godzilla in Japanese mythology, or the Loch Ness monster. Why not? A kind of giant snake slash water lizard that is supposed to haunt the waters of Scotland. So I will be honest with you, we're not going to study that many examples of this definition, actually none, if I'm not mistaken, so it might be something you want to present in your exposé. The final definition, as you remember, is a congenitally malformed or mutant animal or plant. So here we're talking more about biological accidents or scientific experiments gone wrong. Things that come to mind, for example, Elephant Man, so the victim of malformation from birth. So here, is he really a monster in terms of physical appearance? Maybe, but the question is always, who is the monster, remember? Freaks also, who actually were performing in circuses at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, just because they were born with malformations or deformities. You can also think, of course, of fictional characters like the hybrid creatures of the island of Dr. Moreau, who were half animal, half man after vivisection. Right. So our mission, remember, for this semester, for each document, we're going to try to identify the monster. Sometimes it will be pretty obvious, but some of the times we might wonder who is the monster in here. Then describe the monster. This is about using your vocabulary right. So either with just words or because it's a visual document, you will have the opportunity to vary your vocabulary and try to establish a portrait of your monster. And then, more interestingly, analyze the monster's function. What is its purpose in the narrative, in the painting? What is it here for in the story? Okay, myths and legends were often based on monsters, and they always have a purpose, a function, and our job is going to try to establish what this is. Okay, this video is now over. You can move to the next activity.